First, let's start with this case. I'm a 42-year-old bartender dating Tim, a 59-year-old widower who works in the banking sector. I understand how it might look at first glance. Tim's two daughters thought the same thing, assuming I was with him for money. Ironically, Tim is far from wealthy due to circumstances, and I actually have a trust fund. Tim's financial struggles stem from his late wife's battle with cancer, not just once, but 3 separate times. To cover her treatments and ensure she lived long enough to see both their daughters get married, he maxed out 6 credit cards, took out a second mortgage on the house, and even cashed out his retirement savings. He sacrificed everything. Now, he's left with overwhelming debt. His daughters live 6 hours away from us. For the past 2 years, we've driven to spend Christmas with them. During both visits, they ignored me completely, went out of their way to exclude me from conversations, and even made sure their husbands didn't engage with me by talking over me. The first year, Tim confronted them about their behavior. They apologized, not to me, but to him, and blamed their actions on the pain of seeing their father with someone who wasn't their late mother. Unfortunately, the same thing happened the second year. This year, I told Tim I wouldn't go through it again. He was free to spend Christmas with his daughters, but I wasn't going with him. Tim wasn't thrilled about the idea, mostly because I help share the driving responsibilities when his back starts acting up. He refuses to fly and drives an unreliable car that's on its last legs. To make things easier, I leased him a comfortable, high-quality vehicle through my brother, who owns a car dealership. When Tim excitedly told his daughters about the new car and how it would make visiting them easier, they exploded with accusations. They accused him of spending their late mother's money to impress me, and complained that he hadn't given them any financial help for their weddings. This argument led to revelations they hadn't known before. They assumed there had been a life insurance payout and were shocked to learn about the massive credit card debt, the second mortgage, and how Tim had been on the verge of foreclosure and bankruptcy before moving in with me. They didn't even realize it was my house, not his, or that he only contributes to the water bill, since he takes long showers, and shares grocery costs. Now the daughters want my phone number. They've apologized, saying they're sorry I felt lonely during Christmas and that they'd like to visit us next year, specifically in the summer, when my home near the beach would make for a convenient getaway. I've told Tim I'm not comfortable giving out my number. If they want to visit him, that's fine, and I'll be polite, but we're not going to become friends. Had they taken even 2 minutes to speak with me, they would have realized their assumptions were wrong. I've never hidden the fact that the only reason I'm financially secure today is because I avoided the poor decisions that derailed some of my relatives, like my cousin Danny, who fell into a devastating addiction. Tim believes I'm being too harsh and that the girls would have eventually warmed up to me on their own. He thinks their newfound understanding of how generous I've been with him has just sped up the process. But I disagree. I don't care if it happens now or later. They had their chance to treat me with kindness, and chose instead to act like dismissive, mean-spirited individuals based on unfounded assumptions. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. You don't owe them a damn thing. That being said, they are his kids, and you gotta consider that. If you don't extend an olive branch, that means he will be pulled in the middle, and eventually push will come to shove. Is that something you're comfortable with? You're not in the wrong. These are grown women, not angry children, and you owe them nothing, certainly not the money and favors they very obviously want. But also, I'm extremely concerned that your husband never set them straight before. This man spent 2 years watching his daughters treat his wife like a gold digger and never once told them off and told them the truth? You have bigger problems than horrible stepchildren. Putting myself in the situation as his daughters. It would be hard for me to see my dad move on, especially to someone young and different than my mom after a tough death. Even as adults, these type of things bring out the worst in a person. If he's a decent guy and he says his daughters are decent people, then perhaps chalk it up to a bad trauma response and them thinking you were using their poor, sad sap dad. Knowing that someone cared for my dad enough to help him through an emotional and financially difficult period would mean a lot to me. It's possible they do appreciate you more now that they know you're helping their dad rather than taking advantage. I think it's in your best interest to accept the olive branch, but hold back a bit for your own security. You may end up gaining some bonus fun cast of characters in your life. Or they are douchey dirtbags, and you can tell Tim to keep his family separate. You're not in the wrong. But also sometimes being an idiot happens because life is hard and losing your mom sucks. Next up, I'm a 27-year-old man with a condition that causes me to overproduce earwax. It's something I've kept private because I was bullied for it growing up. Only my wife and parents know about it. Every other day, I use medication in both ears, let it sit, and flush it out with a rubber-tipped syringe. This routine prevents serious issues like ear infections, vertigo, permanent hearing loss, and worsening tinnitus. I've experienced all of these to some extent, so I'm diligent about staying on top of my eardrop regimen. To ensure I don't forget, I stick to a strict schedule. If my alarm goes off when I'm with others, I excuse myself to the bathroom for about 20 minutes to complete the process. It's not something I can put off because skipping it can lead to complications. 2 weeks ago, my mom hosted a family dinner. While I was carrying my syringe to the bathroom, my cousin Kara, who's 37, spotted me and asked what I was doing. I brushed it off, saying it was just a minor medical thing, but she kept pressing. Kara is known for gossiping, so I didn't want to share details. I told her it was personal and moved past her. When I came out of the bathroom, she was waiting in the hallway. She asked what had taken so long and why she hadn't heard the toilet flush. Feeling frustrated, I told her it was none of her business. She claimed she didn't mean to offend, but the conversation left me uneasy. Last weekend, a friend invited me out for lunch with some of our buddies and suggested meeting at his house to carpool. When I arrived, I was surprised to find Kara sitting on the couch with my friends, all looking serious. Kara announced that they were there to talk about my problem and that they wanted to help. Confused, I said there was no problem. Then it hit me. This was about my earwax routine. I couldn't help but laugh in shock. Kara, visibly annoyed, asked what was so funny. I responded by asking why she hadn't spoken to my wife or parents if she was so concerned. She said she didn't want to involve my enablers, which only made me laugh more. She declared she was done trying to help and stormed out. After she left, I explained the situation to my friends. They already knew I had a medical condition but had never pried. When Kara approached them, they assumed it might be something more serious. I clarified everything and thanked them for their support. We all had a good laugh about the misunderstanding. Kara, who must have been eavesdropping, suddenly burst back in. She demanded I tell them the truth. I told her I already had. One of my friends asked her to leave, and we went out for lunch as planned. I thought the incident was over until my mom called yesterday. She told me she had spoken to Kara, who was upset with me for not explaining the situation to her earlier. Kara also felt I had embarrassed her by laughing at her in front of my friends. My mom thinks I should apologize, but I disagree. I was embarrassed by Kara's unwarranted snooping and assumptions. She had no right to my private medical information. I believe the situation wouldn't have escalated if Kara hadn't been intrusive in the first place. My mom thinks I should smooth things over, but I feel strongly that Kara crossed a line. Let's start judging. No, you're not in the wrong. No apology needed. I would have laughed my ass off too. She took a small thing that was none of her business and inflated it into a big production that is now all about her hurt feelings. Dramatic much? You're not in the wrong. I went through something similar with someone who saw me giving myself insulin and assumed that it was something else. I was meeting a bunch of people for dinner and gave myself my insulin shot while I was in my truck. Well, someone saw me in the parking lot and assumed I was shooting up, then ran right into the restaurant and about chewed their lips off in their excitement to tattle on me. I was thoroughly embarrassed, but I also had my insulin kit in my purse and got the joy of verbally cutting them off at the knees in front of everyone. Even so, it was still horrible, because people at all the other tables were staring at the drama. I left without eating because it upset me so bad, and then later I had a blood sugar crash from taking insulin without a meal. The person never apologized either. To this very day, I think they're still firmly convinced that I am a junkie and fooling everybody. You're not in the wrong, obviously. Kara made a complete fool out of herself. You didn't have to help at all. Seriously, who says this person went into the bathroom for a mysterious reason, once that I know about? They must have a drug problem. And then to stage an intervention, wow. Next up, my husband comes from a traditional family. His mother is a stay-at-home parent, and his father was the sole provider. My upbringing was the opposite. My mother strongly encouraged me never to be financially dependent on anyone, and she instilled that value in me from a young age. To his credit, my husband has worked hard to unlearn some of the traditional gender roles he grew up with. He's an active and engaged father, shares household responsibilities equally, if not more, and is a genuine partner. However, one thing that frustrates me is how much weight he places on his family's opinions. I understand wanting to make your parents proud, but sometimes it feels excessive. Currently, my in-laws are staying with us for 2 weeks. Our usual routine is this. I prepare breakfast, we all eat lunch at work or school, and my husband handles dinner. We have a cleaner who typically helps maintain the house, but she's on vacation, so for now, we're splitting cleaning duties. Everyone is responsible for keeping their personal space tidy, and we share the workload for common areas. This system has always worked for us. My in-laws, however, dislike my modern approach to life. They disapprove of me working, not finding my sole purpose in being a wife and mother, and of my husband sharing household responsibilities. Early in our marriage, we had an open discussion where I established firm boundaries. I made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate criticism about how I live my life in my home. When I visit their home, I respect their traditions and play the role of the daughter-in-law they expect. For the most part, they've respected this balance. Yesterday, I came home from work exhausted and hungry. I usually arrive around 6:15 or 6:30, and we eat dinner at 7. After saying quick hellos, I went upstairs for a pre-dinner shower. When I came back down to help set up for dinner, I noticed nothing was ready. Confused, I asked my husband about it, but he avoided looking at me. His mother quickly interjected, saying he hadn't cooked anything and that it was my duty as a wife to prepare meals for the family. My husband stayed silent and still wouldn't meet my eyes. Frustrated, I walked away and ordered takeout instead. When the food arrived, I served myself and the kids, and we sat down to eat. My husband and his parents helped themselves and joined us at the table. As we ate, my mother-in-law continued to criticize me, calling me a failure and questioning my priorities. I turned to my husband and asked if he had anything to say. He finally spoke up and said his mother had a point and that it wouldn't hurt for me to act more like a proper woman and take better care of my home and children. He added that tradition exists for a reason and implied it was insulting that I disregarded the way he was raised. At that point, I snapped. I told him, "Tradition won't support a family of 5 on a $35K salary, and you're too broke to be so sexist." His face fell, and I could see tears welling in his eyes. He excused himself from the table, visibly upset. I regret saying this in front of our children. It wasn't my finest moment. However, his comments about me, after everything I do to support this household and navigate the challenges of hosting his parents, were too much to bear. Am I the one at fault here? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Your husband was indeed a coward. He has been a willing participant in your marriage all along and has gamely contributed to the agreement you have that works for you both. It was incredibly hurtful of him to not uphold his own decisions nor defend his wonderful partner of a wife to his parents. When the crap hit the fan, he failed to hold up, and that's a really sad realization for you. What you said might have been hurtful and cutting, but it was the truth, and only came out because he said, also in front of your children, that you weren't a proper woman and didn't take adequate care of your home and children. Frankly, he needed to hear it. How can he think you should be more or better with all that you're already doing? Does he think it's really a valid option for you to just drop your work and career to be a homemaker? And how does he think that's going to go for your family? It's absurdly impractical and makes him look like an imbecile to think it has merit. Hate to fall into old Reddit tropes, but it's got to be therapy or divorce time, no? Definitely do the therapy route because it sounds like he's like 85% bought in and working to be a better person, but that 15% reared its head when his parents came around, which might mean you need some firm boundaries against his parents. It's sickening that they abuse their influence of him and use their time with him alone to turn him against you. If it were me, they would not be welcome in my home ever again, and I'd be seriously considering limiting their access to the grandkids as well, because they are poisonous against you. You're not in the wrong. To be honest, I would have been even meaner. Oh, honey, I would love to be there for my children and cook meals for you, but as you can't provide for me, like a traditional man would, and can't lead but are led by your mother, I'm forced to be the man and the woman here. I also won't tolerate to be talked to like your mother does in my own home. In my home, eating food I pay for. Another word, and I will kick them out. Your husband needs a spine. Desperately. You're not in the wrong. I get you want to present a united front to the kids, but he said that about you in front of them, and that is not an idea you want taking root in your children's mind. He was banking on you bowing to peer family pressure to get away with this disrespect of you and your family's normal way of division of labor. He gambled and lost on that, and I am really proud that you did not bow down just because his parents were there or that the kids were in the room. Too many people let things like this slide so as not to upset the apple cart. This is all on him. He decided it was better for him and easier for him to risk your feelings than stand up to his parents. He chose to upset you versus upsetting his mother. I honestly would not have let them have any of the takeout food. I would have probably taken my kids and left to have dinner with just me and the kids.